Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Bear Bard Tales. It is I, the one bear who turns to the internet for validation instead of just loving himself, the Bear Bard, bringing you more stories from the dark pits of Reddit. Today I have a couple stories for you that include fetishes and refusal to listen to basic rules. If that doesn't pique your interest, well, I'm not mad. I'm just a bit disappointed. But before we get started, if you like this kind of content and you want to hear more from me, make sure to spank that sub button. Yeah, you know what I did there. Each sub I get gets me one step closer to getting myself a new hat. Maybe one with more drama. Our first story today is titled, The Player Who Didn't Make It to Session 1. I made a homebrew world that I restricted to Player's Handbook races. During Session 0, one player brings me a Fairy Folk PC. I explain again what counts as a Player's Handbook race, and she tells me that since it's a homebrew world, I don't have any real reason she can't play a fairy. I stand firm, she relents. She then chooses this weird-ass homebrew class based off an anime. I explain that she should stick to official classes, and then she asks me why I'm acting like this over a game. I ask her to name one game without rules, and she tells me rock, paper, scissors. The table kinda laughs at her, and I explain that rock, paper, scissors does have rules. Look, I'm with her here. Not because there's actually no rules to rock, paper, scissors, cause that's just dumb. But because whoever came up with this game didn't care about life's rules. I mean, in what universe does paper beat rock? Like, hey, it covers the rock. So what, are you defeated by your blanket every night? No. When you cover a rock, you can still use that rock to throw it at the person who said paper beats rock. Tell you what, if you think that paper beats rock, why don't you come after me with a piece of paper? Just know that I have a f***ing rock. She then starts explaining to me that rock, paper, scissors isn't like D&D. I realize I don't even know what we're arguing about anymore, and just ask if she's gonna make a real character. She then makes a human fighter called Mary Sue, whose favorite color is beige. I tell her I'm not trying to deal with this and I don't think we should play together. She then starts begging to remake her PC, but for real. But I basically let her say her piece, then leave. I'd like to apologize for my previous rant about rock, paper, scissors earlier. I'm very passionate about the subject. I mean, paper. Seriously? When I was a young cub, I fixed it. We played rock, scissors, dynamite. Rock still smashes scissors. Scissors cuts the wick on dynamite. Then, you know what dynamite does to rock. It blows it up. See? A freaking bear just fixed the game. That quick. Woosah. Sorry about that. Now, about the story, I freaking hate people like this. Some people just want to argue and be difficult for no reason. Then, when called out, they try to flip real quick. Like, this is the same type of person that sends some messed up stuff in DMs, then the next day says, "Oh, sorry about that, my kid got my phone." Like, that DM was already balancing a homebrew world, and didn't want to add a bunch more homebrew factors to it. So they did the right thing. They asked everyone in a Session 0 to make their character in this format. The PC refused, then tried to stomp her heels and dig in. Then the OP tried to say, "Fine, bye Felicia." Then you get the, "Oh wait." I'm glad OP just booted them and saved themselves from a much longer horror story. Our second story today is titled, My Roommate/DM Decided to Use the Game to Inflict His Fetishes on My Character, because he decided I was repressed and should loosen up more. Yeah, it's one of those stories where the DM ignores all concepts of boundaries and consent. Summer of '98. Only my second actual D&D campaign ever. The first one was more or less a normal game. I had lots of fun with it, and had just ended right before this one. This was to be my second campaign, and my roommate bragged about how he'd been playing D&D since junior high, i.e. about 6 or 7 years at this point. So, he was very experienced and was a great DM. I was a pretty naive and sheltered young man from a conservative upbringing. I wasn't comfortable talking about anything sexually explicit, and everyone around knew that about me. My roommate was an acquaintance I'd met through my first D&D game, and he was a lot more open about sex, to an extent that the main point of friction between us was that he was always trying to do things that would embarrass me in the interest of loosening me up and bringing me out of my shell. I'm just gonna butt in here and say F that guy. I know it's pretty quick for judgment, but I was an awkward young bear at one point. And yes, sometimes we need someone to come by and help us out of our comfort zone a bit, but realized I used the verbiage a bit there. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert. I know a lot of people act like there is, but it's perfectly acceptable. But it's also not a bad idea to try to reach out and be a bit uncomfortable. You develop skills that help you succeed out in the world where introvert skill set is not necessarily valued. But there's a balance to the prodding. You can't just throw everyone into the deep end and ask them, "What's wrong with you?" when they don't like it. If a person actually cares, they'll push a bit, then give when it's too much. This guy just wanted OP to squirm. It was a 2nd edition AD&D campaign in the Planescape setting. After a few adventures, our party was stuck on some outer plane. Arborea, I think, maybe? In any case, the setup was that the only portal to sigil around was held by one of the factions, the Sensates. The faction that believes that experiencing all kinds of new and different things is the path to enlightenment. And they wouldn't let our party through the portal unless one of our party was a member of the faction. Everyone else had formally joined a faction at this point. I'd planned on my character formally joining the Fraternity of Order, the Governors, that believe that understanding the rules of the universe are the ways to enlightenment, which would fit for my character being a cleric of knowledge and magic. However, that faction had a pretty formalized process for joining that my character hadn't finished yet. So as the only member of the party that wasn't affiliated with a faction, I was basically forced to have my character join the Sensates to let us escape the plane. Except they said that my character didn't have enough unique or unusual experiences to join. They said they'd remedy that. Oh man, I can't even imagine where this one's going. That was sarcasm, by the way. The DM has a recruiter from the Sensates. A chaotic good were-tiger, I think some were-great cat, present my character with a magically binding contract, promising enough unique experiences to qualify for membership. That said membership be granted and use of the portal, but my character would be absolutely bound to go along with anything they had him do, as a condition in the contract. I didn't like that the DM was basically taking away from my character the ability to join the Governors, and felt railroaded. But I was a new enough gamer and there was enough peer pressure that I gave in and had my character sign the contract. And, needless to say, all of these contractual experiences were sexual, as the DM takes time to narrate a wide variety of magically enhanced sexual encounters to me. I remember it including a detailed description of magically enhanced BDM scene, shape-shifting, group sex, graphic descriptions of intercourse. A lot of stuff that really weirded and squicked me out, as the DM had a wicked smile on his face narrating it all and I was turning beet red. Hold on, what the hell is squicked? Squick. Verb. Past tense, squicked. Cause someone to feel intense disgust. How have I never heard the term squicked in all my years of life? Even freaking MS Word thinks it's fake. Thank you, OP. I now have a new amazing word to add to my vocab. At the moment, I'm feeling quite gruntled. My DM insisted that this was all perfectly normal as a part of a D&D game. The rest of the table seemed to think that it wasn't too uncommon, and wasn't beyond the pale either. I noticed that there was nothing like this in the first campaign I'd played in, but everyone tried to insist that something like this wasn't really strange or unusual. Years later, it really sunk in how inappropriate this was, and that was near the start of a year-long campaign. Sadly, it didn't get much better. I can say that the DM used railroading my character into the Sensates as a way to screw him over constantly. As, when I played my character as he was actually designed, I got penalized for not following to my faction's ideology. Oh, and my roommate had lots of other boundary issues, like randomly tackling me to the ground and practicing his martial arts holds and pins on me, telling me he thought it was fun or good training. Since I'd taken martial arts classes with him a few times, he seemed to think he could randomly ambush me at any time and call it training. So here's where I usually move on from what OP wrote and give my thoughts. But before that, I actually went into the comments and wanted to read some of them here. Comment. I'm sure you heard this before, but your roommate was a bully. I hope you've been able to put this toxicity behind you. OP? Oh, a bully and lots of other bad things. I left out a lot of other toxic and dishonest stuff he did while we were roommates, because they weren't RPG related. But I was sheltered. I was 18 years old and it was my first apartment, and I was a naive and sheltered kid. And I thought that this person was a friend, something I hadn't had a lot of previously. So he got away with a lot by acting like this is what real friends do. Comment. Remember, when you say don't do that physical thing to me and someone does it, that's assault. Straight up. It's also an asshole thing to do. OP? Oh, there was a gaslighting element to it. When I would object, he would tell me that deep down I liked it. And when I objected again, he'd say that he was empathetic and an expert in psychology and could tell that deep down I was a masochist and really liked him doing these things. So he wasn't going to stop. And the more I protested, the more clear it was that I really liked him doing those things. In later years, I realized just how manipulative and toxic he was. I found out many years later, to a former partner of his, that he's got a huge kink for being sadistic to males. And there it is, the explicitly rapey element that we were missing. Oh, you like it when I do that to you. You think you deserve it. Like, get the fuck out of here. I get it. Some people are into this stuff, and that's totally fine. But here you find a kid that's totally out of his element, and try planting this stuff in his head is just plain wrong. At this point in his life, he has no idea what's going on. Yes, back in '98, we technically had internet, but it wasn't like it is now. You couldn't just ask Jeeves yourself to a place like Reddit and find out about all this. He went in totally blind and impressionable. Getting off the more serious stuff for a second and getting into just the bad gaming, you can't just railroad people like that. I get it. If, for plot reasons, a little railroading needs to happen, fine. As long as you go in and your players are cool with that kind of play, and hopefully you're a bit more subtle with it. It's all good. But here, where you just throw your player into a situation he's clearly uncomfortable with just to be a dick, then to lock him into that over and over and refuse to let him play his character how he wants. To punish a player for just wanting to play their character how they want to, as long as they're not being a murder hobo, is just crappy. I'm sorry that was your experience so early on, OP. I'm glad you were able to move past it and keep gaming. And that takes us to today's bear fact. If a grizzly and polar bear mate, which they sometimes do, the resultant offspring is known as a prizzly or a growler bear. In other words, these are hybrids. In recent years, we've seen a large uptick in these prizzlies due to climate loss, particularly for the polar bears. And I think that's where it's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you guys for sticking with me till the end. It means a ton to me. If you like this video, then make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to connect with me outside of YouTube, you can connect with me on Discord, Reddit, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also check out the Bear Bard Tales podcast if that's your sort of thing. For now, though, this has been the Bear Bard. Stay kind, stay beautiful, and keep on living that bard life.